So if I want a little more color, the turquoisey color up in that corner, I'll come down here and I'll spread that coloring around down in here, and the brush ends up picking up some of it, and then I'll bring that back up into this area. And this is kind of somewhat blending with that Payne's gray in there, so that's looking kind of nice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let this dry up then. I'm going to tip it around. There's places where the canvas hasn't gotten covered well, so I'm going to go ahead and tip it on my edge and make sure I've got those spots taken care of. I don't want to leave anything behind. We want a nice, clean, full skin of acrylics on here to work with. All right, well, this isn't completely 100% dry, but that's okay because that'll just make all this way more interesting. So what I've done is I've gotten a little yellow. Yellow will go nicely with this color, and make some slightly different greens within there. And I'm just going to kind of randomly pick some spots where I'm going to want to add a little more interest so that this isn't just the two-color flatness to it. I'm going to add this yellow, which most yellows tend to be somewhat transparent, but on the container of this particular one, this is a Dick color, and you can see here that it says semi-opaque, which means it would cover up the color underneath if I applied it thick enough. But you can see the way I'm putting it on here, it's not going on thick enough that it's going to completely cover the color that's underneath. Now, if I happen to hit a spot where the paint is wet, like right here, you can see that that's a little bit wet right there. What's going to happen is that yellow is going to blend with the color that was already there, and that's fine because that's just making another nuance. So again, you can see I'm kind of going in multiple directions. I'm not really pushing down the paint into the grooves unless I happen to come across a spot where I feel like right there was a little bit of the white canvas showing through. I'm just kind of skimming the top, and so I might come in closer later when I'm done painting and show you this, but it's sort of like touching the top. And if I come on an angle like this, if I hold my brush in a different way so that it's laying more almost parallel with the canvas, and I kind of swish it around in a circle-y pattern, then what can happen is that paint then sits on top. It's not going down into the grooves, which gives you these really subtle nuances that you wouldn't have otherwise. Now, when it gets into the corners, I'm very, I don't know, sparsely putting on the yellow, and then when I come closer into the middle, again, I'm finding a little white spot right up in there, so I'm trying to not only fill the little white speckly areas, but I'm also trying to make sure that it doesn't look like I just have a splotch of yellow there. That I want this to kind of look like it's all meant to go together. So I'm kind of strategic a little bit about where I'm applying this color of yellow. But you will see that there's more of it. It's going to be more centrally located inside the canvas, not necessarily along the outside edges too awful much. So the way you hold your brush is going to make some differences on how the paint looks. Now see, I've got some little speckles right here, so I'm going to hold the brush up a little bit because I actually want to get it down inside of there. I want to cover those little spots that are still showing through, which is one of the main purposes for coming back and putting a second layer of paint on there, because I can make sure, turn this in multiple ways, make sure that I've got all those little spots disappearing as I put this second color on. I always turn it and look at it from every single angle, because you're going to see some speckles from one area, one direction, and not from another. area or another direction. So I'm looking at the entire canvas. I'm not just painting this end of it just because this is where I'm at. I'm trying to look at the entire thing, and I can see from this angle, then there are spots down here that I'm wanting to make sure get some paint on them. And here I might even get a little heavier with that yellow just because those spots don't seem to want to disappear. So we'll just make sure that we're not putting that yellow, that heavier yellow, only in the one spot. We'll make sure we get a little heavier here and there so that it looks intentional. Like I mentioned earlier, the paint dries, it shrinks a little bit, so every once in a while these little speckles will pop right up. Even if you thought, oh, I had a great coverage of color there, I did really good this time, I'm not going to have any white speckles, I'm sure you'll find if you tip and turn your canvas that you will end up finding that there are spots.